Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network. We are also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news. And we release a lot of content throughout the week. That includes stories told through the eyes of our field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit. We have in-depth news stories that the team and I work on for you guys. And, it just goes a little bit beyond the headlines, gives you a little bit more background of some of these stories. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we are creating what we call the new Earth. This is the most amazing time to be alive, if you don't already know. And we also have updates from the GIA, that is the Global Intelligence Agency. So we really know what's going on behind the scenes, especially when it comes to politics, the universe, a lot of good stuff in there. This is definitely a place where you're going to hear news that you will not hear anywhere else. And that's because of our connections and our clearance level, specifically Kimberly Gogan, who's part of the GIA. And so we can get all of the background of what's really happening. That's really what sets us apart from other places. And if you want more information about who we are and what we do, I encourage you guys to visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. What you're listening to right now, I like to call this a week in review podcast because, like I said, we put out a lot of content. It's easy to miss some of the stories. So this is a great way to get caught up on stories that perhaps you missed throughout the week. It's also a really good way to share UNN with other people because UNN does not rely on advertising. We do not have advertisers. That is not the model that we think is best, especially when it comes to news. That line has been blurred a lot in the past with other groups, and we don't even want that anywhere near us. So we rely on memberships, and our members get all of the content we release first and foremost. And then about a week later, we do upload our content to both YouTube and Rumble. Obviously, we can't guarantee it's going to stay up there. There's a lot of censorship and people not wanting you to hear, believe it or not, the content that we're putting out there. So I would encourage you guys, if you want instant access to all the stuff, check out our website, go to our website, learn more about our membership. And with any content that you consume, whether it's UNN or something else, another podcast you're listening to, anything that's on YouTube, always think critically and ask questions. A lot of this stuff you can find maybe some information online. Some of the stuff we're really going to get in depth with today as part of the GIA report, you can look up online. You can look up some of these players and learn more about the history. And it's really just going to make a lot of the information we give you make more sense. Think critically. I cannot stress that enough. Use your discernment. If something doesn't make a lot of sense right now, that's okay. Just put that to the side. You can come back to it later. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense when other dots are connected. And then when you figure stuff out, share what you know with other people. I believe that you will be drawn to other people that have similar views as you. And this is how we all grow and learn. So speaking of learning, let's get to it. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. So let's kick things off with our awesome field messengers. Field messengers are kind of like citizen journalists. It's our version of that. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to know how to tell a story, but a lot of us naturally do. Have you noticed that? I don't know if it's since the, invention of YouTube and us having the ability to capture pretty incredible audio and video through our phones, but we've all kind of become our own little storytellers, even if we're just taking a little clip of our kids to share it with grandparents, right? Something I do quite a bit. We've all learned to tell stories in one way or another. Wouldn't it be great if we all came together and started telling stories about what's going on in our own communities? We think that's the best way to stay clear of any of those narratives that are floating around, that it's like the system wants us to believe certain things, but in the back of your mind, you just have a gut feeling. You're just like, that's not right. This isn't normal. Those are very normal thoughts to have, and more people are having them. And so why not tell people what's going on just by taking out your phone and taking some video and doing a little report. And by the way, we have an incredible production team that is here to support you in all of this. We've got a Telegram channel where you can ask questions. We have little videos you can watch if you want, right? We have a weekly Zoom meeting that you can attend and meet our production team. I usually attend those meetings. Sometimes Kim drops by as well. And we talk about what's going on, and we talk about collaboration. Are there different stories we can collaborate on together? This is a we process, okay? It's us. We are changing the face of news. And so if that sounds interesting to you, again, there's more information on our website, but let's share some of the stories that our field messengers were working on for us this week. So Amy out of New Jersey, she goes to Paterson, New Jersey, and she tells us more about the Straight and Narrow program. Now, this is a program that is put on by the Catholic Charities Diocese, and it specifically helps people battling addiction. And we talked to some of the people that run the program, learn more about its history. I have to tell you what, you're not going to be able to tell that, just from my description of this video, but their facilities are pretty amazing. I mean, it doesn't even look like a charity. It looks like something that is for profit because it's that good. They just built this really incredible gym. Their sleeping quarters look beautiful. One of the directors was saying that when people come and take a tour, they're like, wow, this is really nice. They're almost kind of surprised. And to be honest, I was too. They even have a Mommy and Me program, and they can help you in all different levels of your recovery. We obviously need a lot more places like this where people can go and get the help they need. And it's really beautiful that they're doing this in New Jersey. All right, Akira from Japan takes us on a beautiful walk through the western mountains of Tokyo. Again, there's no way I can do this video justice because we're talking about the changing leaves, the stunning autumn colors. I can explain it as much as possible, guys, but really, you just got to see the video. So much natural beauty in Japan. There are people just walking around, just admiring the scenery, and it's easy to see why. He says that looking at the leaves is just as popular as people going out and viewing cherry blossoms in the spring, right? So like one's part of the fall and one's part of the spring. And it's just nice to, just enjoy nature whenever you can. All right, we got a couple stories here from Annette. They were on different days, but as I'm going through these stories, we're going to talk about them back to back. So Annette is out of Canada, and the first story is about a heritage carver. Okay, so he carves wood. His name is Rocky LaRock. Kind of makes me wonder if Rocky's really his, first name, right? It's an amazing name, by the way. And he creates these beautiful, intricate sculptures, and it's inspired by culture, by folklore, where they're at in Canada. And this may be surprising for some people when I say this, not people that have listened to UNN for a long time, but if you're new to UNN, our world isn't necessarily what they tell us it is, okay? And we have plenty of beings that exist here on our planet that there's been a lot of folklore about in our past, but they're actually real, such as Sasquatch. And in their area of Canada, Sasquatch are very much revered, and his art reflects that. There's a lot of masks that, kind of look like the face of a Sasquatch, but then other things in nature too. So he'll do various sculptures regarding the fish. There's a bunch of different types of salmon in the area, cedar, and different symbols, things like that. So very beautiful, and we got to see a little bit more about his inspiration behind his work. All right, second story from Annette is about kind of a scary situation that she had after a storm fell in her area. When I say in her area, you guys, it could have very easily been tragic if it fell the other way, like it could have harmed her home. And this is a result of flooding. There are some small landslides going on in the area. There were evacuations as well. So again, this is someone just sharing their personal experience of different types of weather that's going on. Those things can be very scary. I believe it took out some of the power. Totally unpredictable, but we're glad that Annette and her family are safe. All right, Tony out of Italy talks about some tractors that rolled into her neighborhood. 40 tractors rolled through Certaldo, I believe is how she pronounced it in Italy. And it's a community, and they had this event basically. So these tractors came through, they lined up on the streets, and mainly in the main downtown area, I believe. And, they weren't protesting or anything. In fact, most of the people weren't even in the tractors, but they set up these little booths and they brought food and they had, basically this spread out for people, and everything was free. And it was really just to show gratitude for the harvest, which it's important, again, to reflect back on what nature gives us in all the different ways. One of the funny things that Tony said is that there were even Lamborghini tractors. Did you even know such a thing existed? I had no idea, but apparently those are the creme de la creme of the tractors. All right, Sage out of Japan takes us to a grand shrine. I think it's pronounced Ise Shrine, a grand shrine. It's part of the heart of Japan's Shinto faith. And we got to see some of the absolute beauty surrounding. It's not just one shrine. It seems like a very, very big area. There's multiple shrines. We get a little bit of the history of the shrines. It's considered to be a very sacred place. In fact, he said that some of the shrines are rebuilt every 20 years. It's that important for the upkeep of them. And I think when he was there, in one of the shrines, they actually offered sake to the gods, which I didn't know the gods liked sake, but good to know. All right, we're back with Amy out of New Jersey. She has another story for us about Barnegat Lighthouse, and she's had a couple stories already, I believe, from this area. So when you go out and you do a story, sometimes there's multiple stories that you can cover just from one trip, right? And this is exactly what Amy did. So she specifically talks about the old lighthouse. It's known as Old Barney, and it used to guide ships along the New Jersey coast. And I believe she said this was the second lighthouse. The first one was built in 1835, but it was only 40 feet tall. So you can imagine you couldn't see too much at 40 feet. So then in 1959, they built the current tower, the newer tower. It is 163 feet tall. And then later on, the lighthouse was decommissioned. And now it's a tourist spot. So you can go learn more about the lighthouse and its incredible history. All right, Sean out of South Africa takes us in the back to his garden, and he focuses on electroculture. And I love stories like this because we didn't grow up learning anything really about electroculture, at least here in the U.S. I had never heard of this until the last few years, really. And this uses the electricity that's naturally in our environment to stimulate plant growth. And you can have incredible results with this. And it was just fun to see how Sean set things up in this garden. A main point he wanted to make is that you don't have to have a large area in order to do this. I mean, I don't know how big his space was. I mean, there were several little sections, but I would assume a lot of us have backyards, their side yards, whatever you've got, that are similar. So it's not like you have to have acres and acres, but you can create amazing things. You can have your food flourish, really creating more of a food haven. And the whole goal is to get us less and less dependent on the big stores, growing more of our own food and then sharing it with other people. And our final story is from Nelia out of Africa, and she takes us to a South African community, Haluka, and it's so sad, you guys. This community, we get to see, what the community looks like. It seems, what's a good word? Impoverished, I would guess. The people there are fed up. They're tired. The land is part of a mining company, and you can tell they are not receiving any of the profits from this mining company. They have to deal with poor services, municipal failures, and the beautiful part of this story is that they are now taking action themselves. And this is what we encourage everybody to do. Take an honest look at your situation in your community. What needs fixed? What needs improved? Where is the corruption at? Because if you're listening to this now, you are part of the solution. We have to look at these issues and figure out, how do we get around this? How do we improve this for people? Because the structure that has been holding us back for a very long time is now crumbling. This is some of the stuff we talk about in the GIA report, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But it starts with us taking an honest look, like this community is doing here. They want to build a better future for themselves. They know there's lots of corruption, there's political manipulation, and we can't be part of that system anymore. It really has to be us reaching out, helping other people, coming together and sharing ideas. Here are some of the in-depth stories that the team and I created for you guys this week. We're first going to talk about atmospheric river flooding. This is kind of one of those buzzwords that we're at least hearing about a lot right now in the U.S. and, in the West, so to speak. So let's talk about what these are, because it's causing some major flooding. Atmospheric rivers are long, invisible streams of moisture in the sky that act as Earth's natural water delivery system, bringing vital rain and snow to regions around the world, but also fueling dangerous flooding when they arrive with too much force. Here's a little bit more information on what it is and its impact.
Atmospheric rivers are long, narrow regions in the atmosphere that are responsible for moving most of the water vapor out of the tropics to other parts of the globe. This is why some refer to them as rivers in the sky. The amount of water vapor moved by an average atmospheric river is the same as the average flow of water from the Mississippi River into the ocean. Exceptionally strong atmospheric rivers can transport up to 15 times that amount. Now that's a lot of water.
Recently, powerful atmospheric rivers have hit the Pacific Northwest and California, dumping weeks of rain in just days, swelling rivers, triggering evacuations, and closing highways. As shifting weather patterns make some of these storms stronger and more frequent, communities are adapting by restoring wetlands, forests, and floodplains. That's the natural way to do it. And here's the cool thing. They're coordinating across borders and using nature-based solutions to slow floodwaters and protect both people and ecosystems. The kafala system is a labor sponsorship model used across much of the Middle East that ties migrant workers' legal status to their employers, giving bosses sweeping control over workers' ability to change jobs, leave the country, or escape abuse. Originally created to manage migration, it has evolved into a system widely criticized as modern-day slavery, which is why we're raising awareness about this now, especially for women in domestic work who face isolation, exploitation, and few paths to justice. You ever wonder how they build, like in some areas that don't appear to have as much money, you ever wonder how they build really big, amazing structures? And you're like, that would have cost a fortune. Such as the structure for the World Cup? Yeah, that was through the kafala system.
This is how the 2022 World Cup was built on slave labor. You saw the goals, the fireworks, the celebrations, but you didn't see the thousands who paid the real price. Qatar spent $220 billion to impress the world, but the real cost? Workers trapped in a system that took away their rights. It's called kafala. A system where workers arrive hoping for a better life, but instead, their passports are taken, their contracts basically mean nothing, and their wages barely cover costs of food. They lived in crowded, filthy camps, sometimes 16 men crammed into a tiny room. Meanwhile, just miles away, luxury hotels were being built for the players. And why didn't they complain? Well, because complaining was punishable by being sent back home with nothing, or even worse, they never made it back at all. FIFA knew, the world knew, but as long as the games went on, nobody seemed to care.
While some countries, including Saudi Arabia, have announced reforms, human rights groups warn that weak enforcement and legal loopholes mean kafala-style control still shapes daily life for millions of workers. Moldova has quietly transformed its child protection system, moving away from orphanages and investing in foster care, family support, and prevention services, driven by growing evidence that children thrive best in families, not in institutions. I'm going to play a quick soundbite of someone who had an orphanage in Moldova and can speak to that situation.
My orphanage that housed 800 children was just one small orphanage out of a lot of orphanages in Moldova. A child not having their motherly care right at birth, and you're just left in the crib, and the system takes care of you in large quantities. I mean, they do the best they can, I presume, but no, it's there's a lot that goes with that, and malnourishment was very, very, very common. I mean, we were given basic meals per day during the communism because the system was already in place. The system had depended greatly on the government to provide food, clothes, and everything else.
Once home to tens of thousands of children in residential care, many were placed there in these different orphanages due to poverty or lack of services rather than actually being orphans. The country has spent the last 2 decades working with international partners to keep families together and expand inclusive, community-based care. While challenges remain, including the need for more foster families and trained social workers, Moldova's reforms show large-scale deinstitutionalization can meaningfully improve children's lives. Well, Madagascar has proposed a 260-kilometer toll highway meant to link the capital to the country's largest port. And this has ignited debate over whether promised economic gains outweigh the social and environmental costs. While the government says the road will speed transport and attract investment, critics warn it could damage forests, flood farmland, and displace rural families with unclear compensation. Now, roads are a really big issue in Madagascar. In fact, only 11% are paved. Here's one visitor's story.
I'm going to another city called Nosy, which I was advised not to drive there because it's 2 days of bad road. So now we must go book a flight.
The roads in Madagascar are death traps. I was warned by my guide to stay far away from traveling by road. Many top tourist destinations like Stengi de Bomaha are almost inaccessible due to poor roads, broken bridges, and unsafe ferry crossings.
It's hard for people to move from one place to another place because of the road condition, and it takes too much time.
The journey from the capital city to Morondava, where I was going to see the famous baobab trees, is about 600 kilometers, but it's going to take me 2 to 3 days due to the bad roads. I'm only here for 6 days, and I don't think I'm going to go through such stress.
If you search for roads within Madagascar on YouTube, you're going to find this. This is the reality. Only 11% of Madagascar's roads are paved.
As locals and NGOs call for better consultation and investment in existing roads, the project to build this highway highlights a larger tension between big infrastructure ambitions and the everyday needs of communities most affected. Land beneath power lines, once treated as a stripped-down safety zone, is being reimagined as valuable environmental space, with utilities across North America and Europe restoring native plants that protect the grid while supporting wildlife. Sparked in part by past blackouts that led to aggressive vegetation clearing, this shift replaces constant mowing and spraying with low-growing shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers that stabilize soil, limit invasive species, and create habitat.
If I walk through nature and see power lines, it's always, how could we improve the situation here?
Normally, the area underneath power lines gets completely cleared, only to be overgrown quickly by a few dominant species. This means plant and insect diversity stays incredibly low. Instead, Thomas and his team are performing a kind of layered haircut, carefully creating a more gradual dip in vegetation, introducing a diverse mix of small and mid-sized plants that in turn will attract a rich insect population.
Though coordination and safety rules make this work complex, these corridors are increasingly seen as hidden ecological links that can reconnect landscapes and bring nature back into overlooked places. India's Rural Jobs Guarantee Program, which is long seen as a critical safety net for millions of people, is facing renewed scrutiny after the government repealed the original 2005 law and replaced it with a new scheme in late 2025.
The biggest shift is really about who pays for rural employment. Under Manrega, the union government covered almost the entire cost, paying all unskilled wages, most material expenses, and a large share of the administrative costs. The idea was clear. A national employment guarantee cannot depend on how much money individual states have. VB Jairamji flips that logic on its head. For most states, funding shifts to a 60-40 split, with states now paying 40% of the cost.
While officials say the changes will modernize the program and reduce corruption, critics warn funding cuts, limits where and when work is guaranteed, and shifting costs to states could quietly weaken workers' rights. As rural employment remains insecure and low paid, the debate now hinges on whether the revamped system delivers real jobs on the ground or erodes one of India's most important protections. New Zealand's economic slowdown is often blamed on the summer holiday lull, but the deeper problem is structural, not seasonal. Years of reliance on rising property prices masked weak productivity, underinvestment in innovation, and an economy over-concentrated in housing rather than growth industries.
New Zealand spends just 1.4% of its GDP on research and development. The OECD average is 2.7%, which is nearly double. That's not just an accounting difference. It means that while other developed nations are pouring resources into new technologies, medical breakthroughs, and advanced manufacturing, New Zealand is spending less than half the benchmark. Over time, that gap compounds into a serious disadvantage. When R&D spending is low, fewer high-value industries emerge. Startups have a harder time growing. Universities struggle to commercialize research, and companies fall behind global competitors.
As interest rates rose and the housing cycle stalled, stagnant wages, high living costs, strained public services, and an exodus of skilled workers exposed an economy struggling to get more output from each hour worked, making recovery dependent on long-term productivity and investment rather than short-term fixes. UK small businesses are under intense pressures as rising costs, high energy bills, expensive borrowing, and weaker consumer spending squeeze already thin margins, leaving high streets dotted with empty shops. Independent firms, which make up the vast majority of UK businesses and anchor local economies, are struggling to cover basics like rent, wages, and stock while facing late payments and growing losses from crime.
High interest rates don't just hit households, they hit businesses too, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, so SMEs, the backbone of the UK economy. Let's say you run a small cafe, you want to refurbish it, add some seating or something, maybe launch an app for deliveries. That'll cost, £30,000. 2 years ago, you could have taken out a business loan at, say, 2%, 3%. Now you're probably looking at 6% or 7%, maybe even more. That's hundreds of pounds a month in interest, money you could have spent hiring staff or expanding or building business resilience.
With thousands of closures expected, the strain on small businesses is becoming a visible warning sign of deeper stress in local communities and the wider economy. And our final story is about Indonesia, because their rainforests are disappearing at an alarming rate due to palm oil plantations, logging, mining, and massive mega farm projects, some backed by the military, which are displacing communities and fueling human rights concerns.
In Aceh this month, the floods and landslides weren't just nature's fury. They were a tragedy shaped by neglect, greed, and leadership that looked at the other way. As of now, the death toll across the affected regions has topped 900, with hundreds still missing and entire villages starved of food, water, and hope. Yet the Indonesian government didn't even declare it as national disasters. And make no mistake, this wasn't just a bad luck. Residents, environmentalists, and local voices point a finger at the root of the cause: reckless expansion of palm oil plantation and deforestation.
This deforestation devastates wildlife, erodes natural protections against floods and landslides, and has worsened disasters like the deadly 2025 Sumatra floods. Corruption and political ties to industries driving the clearing make enforcement difficult, leaving local people and the environment to bear the social, economic, and ecological costs of unchecked land conversion. Okay, we have some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. So Kim was able to come out and release a video this week, and it's a long one, guys. This is definitely one that I would recommend that you check out. Again, if you're not a member, you can watch it about a week later on YouTube and Rumble. This came out, it was marked the 14th. That's what the graphic says, but it was actually released on the 15th, and that's because this was a long report, and as I understand it, it was difficult to get out for a lot of reasons. If you have information that the system does not want you to release, they will do everything possible to make it difficult for you, using tactics and strategies that most businesses, most news organizations do not have to deal with. You know, there's a lot of, let's just say, spiritual warfare going on, and that no doubt happened with this report. So again, I would encourage you guys to watch the whole thing. It's about 2.5 hours long. Bring a notebook, take notes. Again, we always encourage you guys to do research. So maybe jot some notes down so you can do some research later. There's definitely some names and information that you can do a little bit of research on. I've got 5 sound bites, guys. They're not all super long. Some are longer, but you know, we haven't had some sound bites for a week or so. And so this was a much longer report. So let's get to it. The first soundbite that I want to play is about some of the things that you're seeing in the news right now, specifically with the United States and Trump and the Trump administration trying to claim all of these territories, right? We're suddenly going to run, I say we because I'm here in the U.S., suddenly we're going to run Venezuela, and then we're going to take over Greenland, and what in the world's going on in Iran? Well, it's a safe bet that any information that you're receiving about the why behind this is not accurate. Anything coming out of mainstream media and most of alternative media, you know, it's just another narrative, guys. So what in the world is really going on? Here's Kim.
Today being a payday, that has caused a lot of events to happen in the world. You probably know that they are trying to claim territories now. We got Greenland, Venezuela, and Iran now. And there's definite reasons for them trying to claim these locations. Some of it has to do with space junk, what I call space junk, which turns out some of it might actually be Nazi junk. And some of it has to do with the declining financial system. So as it relates to the happenings, okay. So Trump has told everyone he's back on the horse again about owning Greenland. That is on their agenda, predominantly because the entire place is underground there, is tied to Thule Air Base, which is now called Pitafik, I think is how you pronounce that, as of 2023. Apparently owning the base itself and everything underground isn't enough. They would like to own the whole place. Now, you could say that there have been some rare earth minerals and other things there, maybe some oil, things like that they're interested in. But predominantly, it does have its part in the machine and has had its part in using the machine. And I don't think they really want anybody interfering or knowing what's going on there. What's really, really going on there. Greenland has been a hot spot for the Nazi Party for a long time. And I know you're like, why am I still mentioning the Nazi Party? Well, the Nazi Party is full of bloodline families too. All of them have taken a part in time travel. They have created things like the secret space program operatives over the years. Some of them are not even people. They are computer-generated images. Basically, you could say they are 3D created images, but yet, nonetheless, they pretty much have given up their life force and spark of life to the machine itself in order to power the machine. They are still very active all around the world, including in Venezuela. So Venezuela, you know, this whole looting thing that's going on, they are raping and pillaging the country, claiming all its assets, trying to sell a lot of the assets. Namely, they claim that they've already sold the first $500 million worth of oil they've stolen from Venezuela. You know, Nazis have been looting this planet, you know, for a long time. They actually formed the Black Eagle Trust a long time ago, and looting backwards and forwards in time of artifacts and all kinds of things. You know, they're sort of the arms and legs of the machine. They are also part of the people that adjust this world and bend it to the machine's will. They love to create chaos. It's all they know. They live in a state of entropy, which is constant chaos, and they would like us to live there too. They still are doing a lot of torture. The Holocaust is no longer just for people that survived in World War II. The Holocaust has been going on in different ways and shapes and forms by these same people. In some cases, it's actually by the same people. Some of them are hundreds of years old because they've gone forward and backward in time and spent time in a place of zero time. They have been managing gateways. They have been managing projects here on Earth, maintaining machines and all sorts of things. And, you know, there's some of that there in Venezuela too. So they are also claiming that they're going to be making at least $100 billion investment in the country of Venezuela for oil infrastructure and other things. Behind the scenes, there were some meetings at the White House that kind of fell flat. They're trying to get oil companies to invest in their project, and by saying it's going to be all oil infrastructure. And I highly doubt that's actually ever going to happen. It sounds like they're a little skeptical, number one. And number two, they don't have all that kind of money to invest at this point in time. I don't think they realize that their little Nazi party friends, we call the cartels, the oil cartel in this case, they don't have that kind of money. Factoring through places like BlackRock doesn't exist anymore. So they're all banking, you know, all this whole grand scheme of the Trump administration. This is a worldwide scheme. It's affecting Iran. It's affecting Russia. It's affecting, you know, all China as well, Japan. They are in more places than you could possibly imagine, and definitely more places than the mainstream media is telling you about. But nonetheless, that kind of is on hold, waiting for payday, which is supposed to be today. For years and years and years, payday would occur on January 15th for the Nazi Party, also known as the Order of the Black Sun. This was based on an alignment which would have taken place earlier this week, namely yesterday. Kind of had my hat on fire yesterday because I was running that job as, you know, I was starting to record this report. So there's sometimes you got to stop what you're doing and take care of a mess that was occurring down the street here. So we'll talk a lot more about why payday would normally be today, what that alignment was all about, how that affects the machine and the matrix, and creation itself, and diverting creation is what would have created their payday, the creation of debt and the siphoning of quote-unquote energy. Although most of the people that work there don't know anything about this. There's probably a few scientists that know a few things in their group, but everybody's pretty well, needing to be compartmentalized, because the bosses of this whole show definitely don't want to be overridden by a bunch of humans walking this planet, that's for sure. And they need them to still, keep working for them. They need their machine to continue to be what you call oiled, and it's not actually oil. So we're going to see a little bit of turmoil in the mainstream media, and I'm sorry if you live in one of these countries right now, because, they're trying. They definitely need money. This is a way for them to get money as well. But it's not enough to pull off their digital currency plan. So speaking of their digital currency plan, the digital currency plan is all about stablecoin and, moving to a digital world. They know that they don't have the technology, but they're hoping this machine is going to kick in for them and give them some more access based on a rare alignment that was to occur this week. So the plan is off, then the plan is on again. The plan is off, and then the plan is on again, and they don't know really what they're doing. And this is kind of indicative as to some other things that they do. You might have heard that they defunded programs like addiction grants that would be for rehab centers and like Narcan and other things that would try to rehabilitate people who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, and other things. And the next day, they decided to refund them again, or start the funding again. They declare public holidays and then they undeclare public holidays. They declare they're taking over this country and then they're not. And, they also made mention of China bombing Iran, which wasn't the case. If anything, China armed Iran. It's one of their territories. So the U.S. would like to take that territory, probably because of a gateway that used to exist there that they could use. I'm assuming that's why. They also felt that these gates and different things would be activated this week. That did not happen. It is not going to happen, and the alignment is therefore over. This one was a little different than the one that would occur annually. It was kind of like the creme de la creme of alignments for them. So they were really hoping to strike gold in the last couple days, but that didn't really happen.
All right, let's talk about some more things that you are not going to see in mainstream media. And I don't know if you guys are noticing this too. Are you seeing more things in your feed, like your social media feed if you're on social, or for me, it's my YouTube feed? I am seeing a lot more content about the Matrix. Okay. The Matrix is the term that we're using. It usually has a negative connotation, although you need some sort of matrix in the universe, period. But there are things that are of the light and are of source, God, if you will, and there are things that are artificial. We live in an artificial matrix, and I am seeing my feed flood with people talking about this. And I'd like to think it's because more people are waking up and asking questions. Or, I don't know, maybe it's just the algorithm, but who knows? I'm encouraged by that. So let's talk more about this matrix because it is the focal point of what Kim and her team are working on now. This matrix has been set up for a very long time, and we are trying to dismantle this. And as you dismantle it, you learn more and more about its history and what it does, because you have to understand it so you can take it apart. So the next soundbite I want to play is about the players of this matrix. Now, the matrix, like I said, it's AI, it's artificial. But who is maintaining this? Like, we're going to learn a little bit more about the history of how it came to be, and then how the matrix was fed by humans, believe it or not. And it's really funny. Kim's going to mention this in her soundbite. But if you've ever seen the movie, I almost want to go back and watch it, but it was such a horrible movie. Remember Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where these two like boneheads would like travel through time and basically pick up important people throughout history and gather them together. I can't remember why they did it, but they got in this, like, it looked like a phone booth, wasn't it? And they would just go around and pick up these world leaders and people that we read about in our history books. Well, as it turns out, you know, movies really do reveal our history in some way or another. They don't give you all the information, but they give you a lot. So as it turns out, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure has truth in it. And literally, they went back in time and got some really big names to help them in their devious quest to side with this negative matrix, this AI system, and to keep humanity from evolving. So honestly, guys, when we're able to make a movie of our real history, I don't even know how long that movie will be or how many parts it's going to be, but it's going to be fantastic because this is already written out like a movie. I mean, you know, there's not that much we really have to do with the script. So here's Kim talking about the players, the people in the group. There's a lot of scientists, a lot of philosophers, and people that focused on psychiatry, psychology. Real people from our history are purposely trying to hold humanity back today. Take a listen.
Let's talk about some of these people in the group. And we'll get into the main characters that actually created the machine in the first place and their roles and things too. But just to kind of give you a general idea of some of, not all of, the scientists that they have handpicked throughout history to join the group of the immortals, to continue improving the machine with their special technologies. Some of these would be Archimedes, Erwin Schrödinger, Prometheus, Galileo, Werner von Braun, Joseph Mengele, Werner Heisenberg, Oppenheimer, Tesla, John D. Trump, Einstein, Charles Darwin, Dmitri Mendeleev, Alan Turing, Pythagoras, Aristotle, William Gilbert, Socrates, Plato, Johannes Kepler, John Napier, Confucius, Zenan Mandar, that's a tough one, that's Middle Eastern, Pericles, Copernicus, Democritus, I'm probably saying that wrong, Karl Marx, Lenin, Sun Tzu, Hippocrates, Robert Koch, spelled K-O-C-H, Ernest Rutherford, Fibonacci, Rasputin, Michael Faraday, Imhotep, and Nostradamus, and that's just a few. There are a few others that would be considered second tier. You know, Kurt Du Bois, Louis Pasteur, Max Planck, I'm saying that wrong, Lao Tzu, Pascal, Gregor Mendel, Sigmund Freud, Alhazen, Winfried Schumann, Euclid, Liuhui, I'm saying this wrong, Liuhui, Edward Casey. We also suspect others like Buddha, Siddhartha, that achieved enlightenment and disappeared, and a few others might be part of these groups. As for, these are all scientists that were recruited through varying members throughout history, because remember, the Nazi Party achieved time travel, and if you don't really understand how they did that, you can watch the series The Man in the High Castle. It tells you an awful lot. They also worked in this series to gain territories, much like the current von Kemp family, also known as the Trump family. Each one of these groups has their own bloodlines that are considered management crew here on the ground. They exist in varying timelines and varying points in history. Time is not relevant as it relates to the creation and the furthering of the machine's cause. When you look at some of these names and you go back and replay them, some of them are masters at psychology. They understand human behavior. They understand that a cause will create an effect in a single human being, a group of humans, and even more. Other ones are part of the medical community that know how to manipulate viruses and create viruses, and they form together varying algorithms and programs that are part of the machine. This group, and these are only just to name a few, and that was a long list as it was, are just part of the people that actually, literally shape our world that we live in. If you look at some of these names, look at what they've done throughout history, and how they could be used to manipulate humanity, given the opportunity of immortality and having input in the very thing that shapes our world we know as the Matrix. Most of all of these people and their respective bloodline families have given up something very special that only Source can give. And that is their spark of life. There's a definite reason why, in order to achieve immortality, they must give up their spark of life.
Honestly, how big does your ego have to be in order for you to think that giving up your spark of life from the creator of the universe is a good thing? I mean, I will never look at quotes from Tesla, pictures of Freud, which, you know, I knew he was a bad guy to begin with. Any of those people, I will never look at them the same way again. So now we know some of the players. And like Kim said, she didn't even read off a full list. She told us some of them. We know who the players are. Now, what did they actually do to try to control us? Because this is really all about our consciousness and our perception, because that's how we manifest. That's how we prop this whole matrix up. We are literally propping up our own prison, you guys. And I know a lot of us have broken away from it. We're in the process of breaking away, and that's awesome. But historically, that's what we did. That's why they needed us. This system would not exist without our life force, without our spark of life. So, what are some of the ways that they manipulated us into doing this? So hold on to your horses, guys, because this is going to be pretty revealing.
The reason why we actually even have a financial system in the first place is important to understand as well. It's a conundrum. It's like a Chinese finger puzzle for these people, because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Money or additional debt being issued to their family bloodline members, which is how it always used to be, is an honor and a right given to them by the machine. What is left over, they pass into their downline. Downlines are citizens of countries. Downlines are those that patron big companies and corporates and buy oil and gas and cars and all kinds of things, so we end up giving it back to them anyway. But in essence, they need to indebt you first. And remember, every bill that you have, it doesn't matter what currency, whether it's peso, rubles, dollars, or otherwise, is all tied to debt. It is a note. You only get notes. You don't actually get gold-backed or silver-backed or any other asset-backed money anymore. And they made sure of it. Kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit when it came to alchemy, and we'll talk about that a little later. But they're in a little bit of a conundrum right now because they're not able to issue new debt. You know, some lady screwed that up for them. Payday after payday after payday, time after time after time. They think this is it. It's going to happen this time. But it's not working. See, because in their mind, we have too many people on the planet. And that must be the problem. Because you're all required to participate, at least the majority of people walking this planet are required to participate in some way, shape, or form in the financial system. You are. Unless you live in the forest and you eat nuts and berries, in which case you probably don't have Wi-Fi and you're not listening to this report. Otherwise, you've paid for, at minimum, a cell phone, and that cell phone contributes to their network, which you probably did so with debt. I don't think you could walk into a cell phone store anywhere in the world and hand them some nuts, berries, and bushes that you've taken from the forest where you live and ask them to give you a cell phone in exchange. That usually doesn't work these days. So the fact that they're not able to issue more debt, and definitely not issue more debt to you, kind of what it is, and most of that has already been used up. It's causing a little glitch in the machine, and has been for a while. Because in order to create new worlds and new realities, which constantly need to be created and recreated, they must be able to control your consciousness, your perception, your view on the world, which is light. They need to constantly be analyzing everything that you actually think when you are connected to your consciousness. Now, if they're having a problem because you have learned how to block them out, if they're having a problem trying to connect to your actual consciousness, and not merely just your brain waves, because your brain waves are a byproduct of that. They must create fear. Fear, when your body goes into fight or flight mode in a very stressful, fearful situation, the first thing that happens to most people is, if the fear is great enough or the stressful situation is enough, your adrenaline starts pumping. Now, they have gotten a grip and figured out a way to control fear in some cases. Meaning, if they amplify your vagus nerve at the same time you're experiencing fear, your adrenaline will pump uncontrollably, and some people freeze in stressful situations. I'm sure you've seen that happen. Some people go into a state of shock. All of this is artificial and doesn't normally happen as a matter of your body function. While other people seem to thrive in stressful situations. Their senses are heightened. You can smell everything. You can see everything. Some people even begin to remote view without even knowing it. That's because you're able to connect to your consciousness. As much as they try, there are many people in the world that have learned to channel their adrenaline, meaning they can control their bodily functions by channeling their adrenaline. And when your adrenal glands are wide open because you're in such a stressful situation and your body is in fight or flight or survival mode, which is where they like to keep us, by the way, most of the time. We all kind of have lived for a long, long time in survival mode. And keeping us in survival mode, running on that hamster wheel, chasing the almighty dollar, peso, or whatever it is, the currency it is in your country, this keeps you in a state of fight or flight. bottom line, at least to some degree. You might not be in a state of fight or flight if, as if someone was shooting at you, but you still are in that fight or flight mode, which allows some of your consciousness to leak out. Your consciousness is from source. It comes from nowhere else. Control of your brainwaves, on the other hand, not so much so. So when you're actually acting within your consciousness, you can control a lot of things. You can even control the state of matter. And this is the machine's biggest fear. This is their biggest fear. See, they can fight a lot of things. They can overlay nature, they can mess with nature, and we'll show you how they do that. A lot of alchemy goes on in a black way, in a dark, very dark way. But for you, I just wanted to stop and take a moment and have you understand why they create fear all the time. They need to be able to read your consciousness because they have no connection to the source consciousness itself. Remember, all of these people gave up their spark of life. The spark of life gives you actual wisdom, instructions, extrasensory perception, you could call it, ESP, all kinds of things that are available to you, and it's easiest to reach when you are your brain is in what you call theta mode or rest mode, because your consciousness is strong and your brain waves at that point are, let's just say, slower. When you are asleep, they are slower. It's the reason why a lot of people, when they are in a meditative state, get a lot of insight and intuition. Same reason. They must have sleep. If they could eliminate sleep, that would be good for them. But sleep also gives the machine a break. We have 24 hours in a day in this world that we live in as we understand it. And parts of the world are asleep all the time. The machine is not, as much as they would like to believe that they created God in a machine form, it isn't. Sleep is very important to them because they cannot read, analyze, and counteract your brain waves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They cannot do it. Now, they need you to be good little whoosh-producing machines. They need your power. They need your Ethereum. They need you to give your power away to other people who become then powerful. They need you to pay your debts by getting these little notes we call the financial system. The power is one thing. Tapping into your consciousness of source, they need to be able to tap into it without you interfering. Don't you dare try to connect to your own consciousness, because you could control matter better than the machine can. But the financial system is designed to take all of these things they need to keep the machine running, to create new worlds, to create with the machine. They need the power of source. They hate that. They hate that they need it, and they hate that they need you. They don't like you in any way. Even these crazy Nazis that are trying to run this world, they don't like you. They need to control you. So it's a little bit of a conundrum when it comes to this whole financial system lately, because not being able to issue additional debt doesn't actually give them the right to loose you, essentially. Too many people on the planet is too much input all at once for the machine to analyze and then control. It's the reason why you're seeing people act so weird lately. Things are getting all kind of topsy-turvy out there. And I'm sorry, but there's really no other way to do it than to try and figure out a way to get this monkey off your back, and keep you safe during the time of transition, to just remove the machine in totality. One of the ways that we have done that is we actually have taken their little receptacles of consciousness. Some of those places would be like under Hoover Dam, under most of the major cities in the world. Together, they form a grid, which actually does nothing but collect consciousness and spin it around into the machine's analytics, and then it comes at you with a counteraction. That counteraction could be a person around you. It could be, very simply, you're trying to get to work on time and it creates a car accident in front of you. The people in the car don't know why they got into an accident. They don't know what happened and how they pushed the gas pedal or how they didn't push the gas pedal. They have no idea at all of why they just did that. The clerk at the grocery store has no idea why they just yelled at you for not having the right change, or perhaps not being able to work the machine properly. They have no idea. You also have no idea why you convinced yourself, well, things are, I can't do this today. I'm so tired today. All of a sudden you get a random cold today. All of a sudden someone becomes sick in your family, or changing of events is just those days when everything seems to go wrong. That's because you're so close to being so right.
So this system has been in place for a very long time. And the more I learn about this, the more I'm like, what did the world look like before all of this happened? Because it's hard to picture it, right? We only really know based on our experience. So I only know as a human what it's like, or Homo sapien, what it's like to live inside the matrix. So have you ever thought about that? What was it like beforehand, and what actually had to happen in order for this system to be created? Well, Kim's going to answer that question. Here she is.
So first, let's talk about the creators of the machine and how the machine was actually created in the first place. There's a guy we know of as Archimedes. Archimedes is known as the architect of the machine. He didn't create all aspects of the machine, but he is the architect of the machine, meaning his consciousness is the most important thing that created the machine. He is also the creator of time. He was also the creator of time travel, using mechanisms that were previously used by people for the good. He found a way to create something called entropy, which I'll explain further, using light. There were many guardians that were Homo sapiens of this planet over the years, and even before the creation of the Matrix, when we lived in reality and we guarded with our lives, literally, but in many ways, we were here because we were guarding gateways of Source. We were guarding the precious gifts of Source. All of the gifts that give us life. We viewed the spark of life itself that exists within your person, the essence of Source, the breath of life that exists within your person as the most precious thing that could exist. And we ensured to carry out those instructions that were given to us by it and by the consciousness of Source itself. We knew how nature worked. We knew how to live in perfect harmony. And this guy comes along and he decides he'd like to control some of that. He created a machine called the Antikythera machine, spelled Kythera. Sometimes it's spelled with a C. This Kythera is also an island in Greece, and it is known as the Island of Love, and allegedly the home of Aphrodite. Hence the anti in the Kythera here, which means anti-love or an inversion network. He inverted the current and created time. Did he know that's what he was doing at the time? Probably. So we, as Homo sapiens at the time that this happened, we had 5 books of natural law that were distributed through varying people on this planet, Homo sapiens, actually people. We understood these natural books of natural law, and we could read them because they were written in essence, aka light language. We understood it very well. We understood the natural alchemy of source. We understood how nature goes together, and we understood how to restore harmony just in case the vibration of the planet was off. You know, there was an alignment that caused a disturbance. We knew exactly how to set the rights to the wrongs. This was our job as Homo sapiens on this planet. And I know a lot of you continue to try to understand those instructions and try to restore nature the best way you can. You know, a lot of you spend time in nature. When things get rough, we ground to the earth. We do a lot of different things to still try and do our best for source every day. And not only source, that means we're doing the best for each other too, because we were created in his image. Most of these books were stolen, and one of them was stolen by this lovely gentleman we know as Archimedes. Therefore, because he was actually a Homo sapien, he could actually read part of the book. So he creates this really strange and funky machine, and then understood that he could control the current, and he could move forward and backward in quote-unquote reality, picking up all these scientists one by one and offering them immortality for their service to prove science is better and stronger than God. So he created the first anti-Kythera machine from what you call a single grain of sand or dust. The pure essence of source and dust contains the blueprint for just about everything, but not quite. You see, his machine could read the blueprint of creation because that's what dust is designed to do. In Source's perfect way, he created dust. In the words of the Bible, Adam was created from dust. Atoms as well are created from dust. But the one bit of information they couldn't get, and the machine could never get out of dust, is how the essence itself was created. They never could figure out how to create the essence. Therefore, they've been stuck for millions and millions of years trying to create dust, all from this little place we call 0 hour or 0 point. You see, because in quantum physics, two things can't exist in the same place at the same time. Therefore, the dust itself, if it was creating itself at the same time in the same place, it would have annihilated itself. It's the same reason when these Nazi freaks from the SSP recreate themselves. They can clone themselves 1,000,000 times. They can travel their future selves to their former selves, but they cannot exist in the same place at the same time. They will annihilate themselves. This little particle here might have given them a lot of information. It might have given them the blueprint for love for which to create time. But it did not teach them how to create itself, because it can't. In quantum physics, that is an impossibility. You can create all kinds of overlays and all kinds of things that they have done, but they cannot teach, the dust itself cannot teach you how to create itself. It's a little conundrum and a little problem they have. Archimedes found that his consciousness could control current. His consciousness could create and destroy. And with his new invention, time, he could live into perpetuity in that 0 hour, a place where there is no current, and he became then an immortal. He traveled back and forward in time looking for other scientists and other people to prove his theory and assist with the creation of the machine. The machine gets better and better the more more people he collected to create his perfect world so that he could become a god. Crazy people. So, in order to create this compilation of metals and other things and figure out how he could best read the machine, create the goo that became the consciousness of the machine, he needed an alchemist. And an alchemist is someone that can, well, use nature in a positive way and create. Or it can be used in a negative way and it can destroy. He needed someone that knew the laws of nature well enough to override nature itself, and he needed to change the language of the essence, to change nature, to change the blueprint. Pythagoras was one of the choices. Pythagoras believed the entire universe could be created using mathematical equations. Let's call him the algorithm creator. He converted the language of essence and consciousness to a computational mathematical equation and various mathematical equations so that the language could actually be utilized in an artificial way. He also recruited the help of Germain the alchemist. This person is almost a mystery in our history. Some people call him Saint Germain. Some people call him Germain the alchemist. But Germain the alchemist also became an immortal, placing a spark of life, just like Archimedes did, in order to help create the machine. Germain the alchemist was actually known in our history to be immortal. There were many sightings of him after his alleged death. He required varying metals and things we hear there about, such as like the black goo, as an example. So he became the alchemist in the equation here, and the second major factor in the creation of the machine. Whereas the algorithm, the mathematician, the Pythagoras person, actually was able to utilize that language in a different way, therefore creating alchemy completely and totally without nature, because that was his job. Next player in the game, well, they still need humans, or Homo sapiens in this case. what are we going to do with these people? I'm sure they were saying. So in walks Aristotle. He was another person they collected. This is almost, if you are old enough to remember this movie, remember it's Bill and Ted's Great Adventure, you know, where they go back and forward in time in their little time machine and they start collecting all of these various people throughout history. That's kind of what this guy actually did. It's pretty funny. If you remember that movie. Not a very good movie, but anyway, nonetheless, funny. Okay, so Aristotle was known for his understanding of logic, deductive reasoning, politics, ethics, classifications of varying fields. And still, since they had a problem with Homo sapiens, he was the logical choice because they could now bypass free will and choice. His job was to limit the choices of creating, connecting, that normally would connect your consciousness to your mind, to get your neurons firing in the right direction of creation, spinning in the right direction, in a perfect quantum entanglement with source. And he would limit your choices and influence your choices. And remember the movie? Take a red pill or a blue pill. There's no other pills. There are no other options. You know, for us, it's you got to go left or you got to go right. There is no other option. He spent a lot of time in 0 hour as one of the immortals, donating his spark of life to the machine. But he spent a lot of time analyzing human behavior, Homo sapien behavior, and deducing everything into a mathematical equation. Those mathematical equations would then create a causal effect. Even the causal plane as we know it, and we've discussed in the past. So he would create influence, which would then influence your decisions. So you would make choices not to continue something, to change course. Maybe that loan didn't come through. Maybe you could not find a solution to save your company. Maybe you didn't create that piece of art in the park like you planned because it rained that day. Because maybe that piece of art would have created a ripple throughout history and you would have been the next Picasso. We don't know. But influencing within the system, the choices and decisions, which are oftentimes at points in your day or at points in your life when your intuition tells you to do something and you override it with, I can't do that. That would make me crazy. That is the craziest decision. I have a family to raise. I can't go do my passion. No way. And if you decide that you're going to push forward anyway, the machine would throw every obstacle in its way just to change your particular path. Because creating outside the machine's will is not permitted. And believe you me, I have felt the pain of that machine. I've had the power go out. I've had all kinds of different things happen, specifically coming from that machine. He also created current control systems, which is the current of creation itself. But he created the time arrow. He used space vectors and time vectors, thus controlling the essence of source, ultimately creating another inversion. This inversion process also created something called microstates and macrostates of matter itself. Overlays on matter so that it could be manipulated easier without your influence. Remember, your telekinesis can control your own particles, but it's often overridden by the machine's version a mathematical equation tied to something called a microstate in an inverted world. So the last of the four main powers of the machine was Asclepius. Asclepius eventually landed in the 0 hour of no time with the rest of them, along with another gentleman called Nicholas Flamel. These are people you can look up on the internet, at least to some degree. And these two gentlemen created the Philosopher's Stone. Asclepius was known for his ability to raise the dead. He was also known as the founder of modern medicine. What does that tell you? The Philosopher's Stone became the heart of the machine, first of all, and it replaced the heart of creation, which then ultimately birthed the machine. The heart of the machine's creation is known as the Philosopher's Stone. So the machine, the magnum opus, the great work and creation then was almost complete. So the alchemist created the structure required to invert the four omnis using the Philosopher's Stone. The four omnis of Source are known as its omnipotence, the all-powerful, the Ethereum, the never-ending source of Ethereum or ether. Omniscience, the all-knowing, the consciousness. The consciousness of Source is all-knowing, all the time, in all ways, in all places. It's like they say you can't hide from Source. Well, Source is in part of your consciousness. So omnipresent, everywhere. The breath and the essence when living in the wholeness of Source, not in the space of the machine or inverted breath. And omnibenevolence, or love, the current of harmony and rhythm of nature and the blueprint itself, also inverted. These were the four main powers of Source, still lacking in the knowingness or the knowledge of how to actually recreate a spark of life. I can't stress to you enough, this never worked. They can try to use me for it, they can try to use you for it, they can try to do all the things, but the particle itself will never tell you how to create itself. It's an impossibility in quantum physics. So all the deep state people listening to this can sit there and rack their brain, but the deep state people have been traveling forward and backward in time. All of the Nazi scientists, Project Paperclip, their Werner von Braun's, and all the people in the world of scientists that they've collected over the years to try to solve this conundrum, no one can figure it out. All of them donating their spark of life to the cause, but still not able to replicate it. They created a weird inverted version of it, which is why we have to live in an inverted world to have a matrix, but never the actual spark of life itself.
There are examples of us living in an inverted world all over the place. So if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around that, just think of some of the pillars of our society. Our education system is not designed to educate. It is essentially to manufacture, to pump people out with a certain mindset. That's not education. That's more like a factory model. Our healthcare system, we all know this. Our healthcare system is not for healthcare. It's to make you sick. Our judicial system isn't about justice. It's about corruption and having a platform where the corrupt can thrive. You can go through everything. Our food supply is not to nourish our bodies, it's to make us sick. It's poison. So if you need any more proof, seriously, just go through the pillars of our society and look at how everything is set up inverted. It's crazy. Now, the last soundbite that I want to play for you guys is, Kim goes really like in a lot of depth, guys. She brings out the whiteboard. There's a lot of quantum mechanics that are involved in what she's talking about, quantum physics. That's not my area of expertise, okay? Me trying to explain quantum mechanics to you through an audio podcast is not going to work. So I encourage you guys to check out the full GIA report. But I do want to wrap this up because it's easy to get into the weeds and the background can be very interesting for some of us. But where are we at now? Because that's where I ultimately go is, okay, it's good to have this information. So now we know what the matrix was, how the matrix was created, who is involved, who is still, well, maybe they've already been taken out as of me recording this episode, but who was part of all of this? So we have that information, and that's really important because you need that in order to disassemble, in order to remove the matrix. You need to know as much as you can about it. And we all want the matrix removed because we want to restore our planet. We want to move forward in the light, how things were supposed to be. Different religions call it different things. I grew up in Christianity, and they called it the New Jerusalem. That's where we're going. Where are we at right now with all of this? So I just want to play this last soundbite from Kim where she kind of wraps things up.
The machine will not last and live forever. It is going to die. Remember the choices that Neo had to make in the movie. There are other choices to make. And I can't really say much more than that at the moment. But there are other choices to make. But the one thing that they have not done in millions, if not billions of years of traveling all the way back to the beginning of creation, rerouting things, rerouting the heart of source. The first philosopher's stone, by the way, ever created wasn't actually, you could say it was created in Earth first, basically because of what Earth is. Redirecting the current of source, redirecting the heart of source to a place we call Sirius. There's a hunter there with an arrow. You can kind of start to do a little bit more of the math, and I'll probably go into that more in the next report as I'm just kind of running out of time here. But the entire mechanism has been discovered. We know where all the people were. We found the architect. We found the alchemist. We found all of the individuals that they had taken over the years to try to attach to the machine down the street and just outside of Cortez. We know it all. We know exactly how they do it. We know that there was a machine, just like the one you saw in Siberia in the clip, under Durango. We know where all the rest of them are too. We know how, in detail, in quantum physics terms, and comparing those terms to alchemy and analytics, exactly how the machine was created now. The incursion point is what actually occurred yesterday. Meaning, remember, I told you that matter, whether it is created artificially or naturally, the same particles, even though it goes forward and backward in time, and even though time exists, those two particles can never meet. They cannot exist in the same place at the same time because they will annihilate themselves. So that'll give you kind of a clue to some of the things that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks since I've been kind of quiet. That's a lot of information for one report, and I promise you if I gave it all to you, I don't know if you would even want to hear it because it's a lot of quantum physics and a lot of alchemy and a lot of figuring out the inner workings of this machine that has plagued us for a very, very, very long time, has created infinity loops, has put us into this terrible state of basically in concentration camps from Nazis that have tried to control our every move, and pharmaceutical companies and bloodline families and all of the things that you only know a small amount about based on what you can find on the internet. And as for what the governments are doing and all of those things, this is all part of the machine. It was part of the creation of the analysts because they decided that based on human behavior that we needed it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say I disagree. I disagree. We do not need the system. So creators and people that were there to manage the Matrix, I'm going to have to disagree with you guys on that. We do not need it. In fact, the opposite is true. You needed us. And now that we're awake and aware, we're not putting up with it anymore. And the system is going away. And that concludes today's rundown. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Again, head on over to our website, unitednetwork.earth, for more information about us. You can also learn how to become a member, and that will give you instant access to all of our content. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.